as much as we've explored about the bottoms of the oceans and the different kinds of creatures and chemicals and rocks that inhabit our world with us, the mind remains still one of the greatest mysteries, and the nature of what it means to be sentient and aware and conscious is going to be something I suspect we debate for a very long time.
What does it mean to be human? Is it found in our breath, the beat of our hearts, or in the fleeting moments of joy and sorrow? We are fragile beings in a vast universe. What does it mean to be conscious, to wonder? We are explorers of our little world and of ourselves. In this series, we look into this internal exploration, questions with no right answers, only ideas of what it is like to be human, to express what can hardly be explained. We aim to send these explorations beyond our planet, into the furthest reaches of the galaxy. What will the finders of these messages make of our voices, of our questions? Will they see us as we see ourselves? Perhaps too, they are searching, as we are, as humans.
I feel when I look at the stars like I'm part of something much bigger than my own life. It changes your perspective as an astronomer about what it means to be human when you realize that the atoms in your body were forged inside the very stars that you're looking at, or cousins of those stars at least. And since I was a boy, I've loved just laying out on the grass and looking up, trying to count them, looking for the shooting stars and wondering what else might be out there. And I think for me, one of the most obvious questions was just wondering if there could be other life forms and peoples, and what those vistas and worlds might be like to one day visit. So looking at the stars is inspiring. It grounds me. It gives me a sense of awe, but also just wonder and majesty and a sense of integration with something much bigger than myself. What does it mean to be human? You know, when I'm on the subway in New York City, riding along, and I like to try and look at the other humans who are sharing this little cabin with me, going under a tunnel. And what I think about is that these humans are, you know, as strangers as they are to me, they are the most closely related entities for billions and billions of light years. And I could travel to the other side of the universe, and I will probably not meet another creature who will understand me as well as my worst enemy on this planet. That each of us are so closely related that we are something special to each other. And to be human means to know almost the mind of each other. It's to have a sense as to how we all appreciate the sunrise and the sunset and a beautiful piece of art, and what it means to be hurt by something and to fall in love. And these are just universal truths that we all experience. And as a scientist, I can't help but think that a fundamental part of our being is a desire to explore, that human nature is to take the next step, whether it's technological, whether it's artistic, innovative in some way, or physically expanding and moving across the continents, leaving Africa and spreading out to new worlds, because we have this compulsion, which is sometimes a negative part of our quality, that we just are curious about what else is out there. And sometimes curiosity kills the cat, and sometimes curiosity comes with other baggage. But I think a fundamental part of who we are is that we just wonder who we are in the broader context of what else is out there, and we want to answer the next question and the next question and the next question, and that insatiable need to keep going, defines the scientist, but I also think it defines just the human spirit to want to keep exploring. I think the moment we stop doing that, we've probably lost a lot of what really makes us human. Consciousness is hard to define. It's something we've been wrestling with. Like, what does it mean to be conscious? Where do you draw the line between a being or a creature or even a state of mind that's unconscious versus conscious? I think that's what makes it scientifically so interesting, is that as much as we've explored about the bottoms of the oceans and the different kinds of creatures and chemicals and rocks that inhabit our world with us, the mind remains still one of the greatest mysteries, and the nature of what it means to be sentient and aware and conscious is going to be something I suspect we debate for a very long time. It's obviously coming to the fore in recent years with these advanced artificial intelligence models that are sort of challenging us to think about what does it really mean to have agency, and when something truly becomes alive versus just parroting back information. And perhaps in the end, what we construe as consciousness is nothing more than a willful desire that we hope really deep down that we are something separate and conscious. But maybe that consciousness is a mirage, in the same way that the very idea of free will has been argued often to be nothing more than a mirage and an illusion. And we have to perhaps stomach that. But at the same sense, it probably shouldn't worry you too much in your everyday life, in the same way when people say, well, maybe the world is simulated and we're all living inside the matrix. Perhaps there is no free will. Perhaps there is a simulated world out there. And perhaps what we think of as consciousness is an illusion. But at the end of the day, you are still you, and you still feel like you're making your decisions, and you should still go ahead and try to make the best decisions you can in your life. I believe that. So I think it's easy to get almost paralyzed and worried and scared and disturbed by these ideas about, what truly is consciousness. And I'm no expert on that, of course, but I would say just from a perspective of trying to be the best person you can in society, don't let those things paralyze you. Take agency of your life, even if it is an illusion of agency. Still grab that agency and do the best you can with it to be the best person you can in society. And I think I've always tried to maybe bury my head in the sand a little bit on those topics, but I just think I have to act in a way that leads me towards positive outcomes for myself. And sometimes that means putting aside those philosophical concerns. Yeah, death is scary. I think I'm approaching 40 years old. I'll turn 40 next week. So, it's that classic midlife crisis where you start to look back at your life and you think, wow, I'm halfway to this point, which my whole life I just assumed was so far away. I never had to worry about it. But day by day, it creeps up on you. And you start to appreciate just how incredibly short life truly is. It's kind of remarkable that we have lives that are 100 years, but to the cosmos, that is just nothing. It is just the blink of an eye. It's just so tiny. And when it comes to life, I think of it as just a gift. It's like, well, I have no right to expect existence, and yet it is here and I'm enjoying it. Maybe that's almost a anthropic reasoning type statement to make, because I have to be here. But I think you can also just appreciate the gift of it and think, this is transient. Death seems terrifying, but I often love the words of Alan Watts about this, a philosopher. And I'm not going to try and quote him, but the lesson I learned about it, he was asking, why is there death, and why is it necessary in a world to have that? And he talks a lot about, the influence of children, as I have children now, and it does change your perspective a little bit. If we never died, if we lived forever, and there are people trying to do that, there are people who want to become immortal via biological methods or uploading their brain or something. But how dull would the world eventually become? And when you look at your kids, you see them get fascinated by the most seemingly mundane things, just like a crack on the wall can occupy them for 30 minutes, just studying it, asking questions about why it's there, trying to stick things in it, trying to make it bigger. They're just interested in things. And as an adult, I walked past that with just no interest whatsoever until I sort of rediscovered it through my kids, I suppose. And I think as you go through life, you just become more and more jaded by things, and you become, oh, I've seen that before, I've seen that before, I've seen that before. And eventually you get to a point where just nothing surprises you. And I would hate to live forever and be bored by everything around me. That sounds like a torturous existence to me. And so death is the only way to have a new generation. Otherwise we'd fill up the whole universe pretty quickly if nobody ever went away. And it's necessary so that we can have the gift of children who get that light in their eyes of rediscovering something. And that makes life so much more exciting when you catch a glimpse of how they see the world. And sometimes you even remember like a part in your brain deep down of something rediscovered. I remember that. Yeah, I remember thinking that was so amazing the first time I encountered that, and I lost it. And now I just caught a glimpse of it through my child. So I think, yeah, Alan Watts' words are definitely worth checking out. He's very wise on this topic, and he really changed my perspective of how death is an absolute necessity to avoid the boredom and mundaneness of what would otherwise be a fairly torturous existence. Love is part of being human, so much so. I mean, what would a life be if you never experienced love? It would be a totally wasted existence. We are a product of love, from some moment of embrace, or some parent that looked after you, some friend that was kind to you when you were growing up. There is love has at some point in all of our lives led to who we are. And I think we have to be careful with how we choose our behaviors, because it's so easy to slip into a strongman position, right? I'm going to be the tough guy. I'm going to be the hard person. It's so easy these days, especially in scientific discourse and critical discourse, political discourse, to just hate on something, right? To say, this is stupid. This is dumb. That's a bad idea. And to be frivolous with our words in unkind ways. And we've lost a lot of that compassion. I think compassion is such a closely related concept with much of overlap with the idea of how to love one another. When you realize we are all just brothers and sisters, right? I mean, we're one human race. It's kind of tragic when you sometimes observe the way humans behave towards other humans. But the one of the strongest forces that you get to see in everyday life is those little acts of kindness and love towards one another. Sometimes on the subway, you'll see, a woman drop her shopping all over the floor. The bag will break, and 3 or 4 people will come over and help pick it up. Just a little act of kindness like that will just make you think, wow, the world isn't all bad. Like, some people are out there doing things with there's no gain or no hope. It's just purely to be kind to another human being. And, I say on my kind of slogan, if you like, on the Twitter profile, be kind to one another. I think that's just like one thing we could change about the world. If everybody just acted a little bit kinder to each other, it would be pretty transformative, I think. Probably the most transformative thing we can do. Love is obviously fundamental to my own personal life, and I think to many of our own personal lives of my children and my partner. And none of us are isolated oases or rocks in the ocean. No person can stand completely alone. Eventually, it'll wear you down. And I've tried, I remember early in my career thinking I could just do everything myself. I can just push through. But the support and kindness from other human beings makes your work more enjoyable. It makes life more enjoyable. And ultimately, it gives you an opportunity to give back to others and provide the same love and kindness you once received, to give them a chance to help somebody else be lifted up. And that's why I love my work as a professor, because I get to work with young people, with students, graduate students, undergraduates. And you remember that somebody at one point gave me a chance. And when they're knocking on your door, looking for that opportunity, it rekindles that somebody was kind to me at one point, and that I could be that person for this person, to give them a chance. And so I think it's part of every fabric of our society and every part of our life. And to pretend we're these robotic beings who walk through the world without these feelings diminishes us in ways that it's kind of tragic. I'd say kindness is about trying to put your mind in another human's mind and ask yourself, how would my actions be received? And I grew up in a Christian family, actually, and I left the philosophy of believing there was a God, but I think the lesson of to treat others like yourself, that many religions have that same lesson, is a really beautiful one. It's in Buddhism as well, that everyone is essentially being reincarnated on this great wheel and turning up. And so that human being you're interacting with has a mind, they have feelings, they have reactions to what you're doing. And so that means I think you have a responsibility to treat that with some level of respect and dignity, and not just trample all over it. You will feel good about yourself in acts of kindness, and it can often be the greatest highlight of your day to know that you helped someone. So kindness is something I'm not perfect. We're all working on these things. Nobody is the perfect human being, but I think we all can work on just trying to consciously think of a way to be a little bit kinder each day. And it just makes whatever it is, your profession scientifically, your family, your friend group, just a stranger on the street, the city you live in, it just makes everything more positive. There's nothing ever got worse because somebody was kind. So I strongly believe that it is something that is enriching to our society. Time is a great mystery. It's the river, it's the companion with us every day in our lives, and it's like one of those many concepts in physics and science that we still struggle to well define and really pin down what it means. I think that's what makes it so alluring, that we know it internally, we feel it, it is familiar, and yet at the same time, it is so difficult to pin down about what it really means. And even simple questions like, do you experience time in the same way I experience time? Does an alien creature see things the same way I see things? And time plays so many tricks on us. Even, in our lives, you can watch a kettle boil and it seems to take forever, versus you can watch some game or some movie and the hours just flicker by and you wonder where it all went. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing about time is that it gives our lives a sense of urgency, that this is it. The clock is ticking, the sand is coming down, but at the end of the day, it gives you a sense of urgency, that the clock is ticking, the sand is going through the hourglass, and that this is it. You have to take a hold of your life, because if you do not pay attention, a year, 2 years, a decade will go by and you'll wonder where that time went. So for me, time is a motivating force in my life. It is a mystery in terms of its scientific and physical concepts, which is incredibly elusive and difficult to pin down. But in a personal human level, it is a positive force that pushes me to not just sit on the sofa and eat chips, but actually grab a hold of what's happening around me, because if you don't, it'll disappear before you know it. When I think of information, I think of knowledge. I think human knowledge is an accumulated body that is probably one of the most valuable things that humanity has ever done. In science, we stand on the shoulders of giants. I always think about that sometimes you think, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful to have been born 300, 400 years ago and be a scientist? Because things seemed much easier. You could just put a piece of wood in a water and discover buoyancy and you were a famous scientist. But of course, it was easy to say that in retrospect, but those ideas were so foreign and the world was so mysterious that it took almost awakening type experiences for these scientists, enlightenment moments to take that step, and a step that we take for granted. But because of those breakthroughs they had, it made the next step possible, and the next step after that possible. These transformations of thinking the sun was going around the earth and the earth was the center of the universe. It took a huge break conceptually for us to let go of that and leave the geocentric world behind and move to the heliocentric. And then we had to take another step when we allowed for the galaxy not being just the only galaxy, but one of many. Each of these steps opened up doors of possibility. They were information. They were knowledge that we were accruing. Sometimes there was missteps. Sometimes that information took us down avenues that we had to unlearn and go back a little bit. But then it was more of a case of sort of one step back, two steps forward, that we could correct it and make more progress. So information has an important part to play in human society as a thread, because it's really the one thing that outlasts us. The houses we build, the artifacts we make, the products we use, all of those things will dissolve and wash away. But the most valuable thing our ancestors and we ourselves could possibly leave for the future is the things that we've learned. And I'm sure there'll be many things that we've learned which will be superseded and corrected, but none of that would be possible was it not for having the base, the shoulders to stand upon in the first place. And I often worry about losing that information. If we went through some kind of cataclysm on this planet that was so bad that we forgot how to do many of the things we know how to do, or even just the basic scientific knowledge of how the world works, it would be a tremendous setback for humanity that we'd have to rediscover all these things. And actually, there's no guarantee we would. Humanity has been on this planet for millions of years, but we, especially the modern human, I'd say, has been around for at least 100,000, 200,000 years. We only really started having what we'd recognize as technology and, a civilization, cities, agriculture in the Neolithic, so 10,000 years ago. So it's a very long period of time where this progress was not happening. And it goes to show you that if we lost that information, if we lost that knowledge base, it could be an enormous reset and a very long time if we ever get back to that point. So our information is just incredibly precious. And I think that's true in our lives as well. Back up those photos, back up those precious documents you have. And in the same way, humanity needs to back up what we've learned about this world and universe, because it's all we really have. Well, I don't know what the meaning of life is. I don't have a solution for that. It's the greatest question that has been asked by so many wonderful philosophers and people a lot smarter than me. I think in the end, we all have to find a personal meaning. That's all you can do. A scientist looking at it completely clinically and coldly, you look at it and you don't see any meaning. I think it's okay, and I've come to terms with this, that everything around us is an accident. That this planet was an accident, a giant Mars-sized planet smashed into primordial Earth. It stripped off enough lithosphere to allow for plate tectonics. That allowed the axial tilt of the Earth to be stabilized by the gravitational pull of the moon. That was apparently just an accident that happened. We wouldn't be here was it not for that accident. And there's countless series of these accidents that have happened throughout Earth's history, including your own parents' meeting. That is another accident that have happened. Your very existence is definitely tied to that. So does that mean that your life is meaningless because you are here by chance. I don't accept that. I don't think that's true. I think it gives you the onus, the ability to define your own meaning, that there is no script, there's no predestiny, there's no code that you have to follow in your life except for the code you define for yourself. And that's empowering. I often think of life, growing up playing a lot of computer games, don't get to play as much as I'd like anymore, but when you're in a game, you eventually realize, okay, this is the rules of the game, and my job in this game is just to sort of go around and maximally exploit these rules to become whatever, to win the game, to conquer the thing. And when you look at life, it kind of feels like a game in some ways. That there are these rules, the physical rules of the universe, and humanity is a player in this game. As far as we can tell, there's no like game over point in this game except for the ones that we create for ourselves. We have, in principle, the opportunity to become whatever we want in this universe and do really whatever we want, bounded by the laws of physics. And those laws of physics seem constraining at times, but in other ways, they're quite liberating. There's really no reason why we couldn't colonize Mars. There's no reason why we couldn't spread out between the stars. It would take hundreds of thousands of years, but that's fine. Species last for that long. It's very liberating when you realize the universe lets us, in principle, do all these things. And the same way with our very own individual lives, that there is a society and there's constraints on us and controls, but it is ultimately up to you how you play this game, that you have the full agency of how to play this game. So the most wonderful gift we have is our freedoms, especially in this country. So I think the meaning of life is to choose what you want to do. And that is the most wonderful gift, that we get to choose what we want to do. I think my aspiration is that we don't end it too soon. Let's keep the party going as long as we can. We may very well be, as Sagan said, the way that the universe knows itself. And that kind of means that we have a responsibility to make the most of this incredible confluence, this incredible accident that we get the chance to know. And not just that we are observers of the universe, but truly that the universe is us. Like, this is it. This room is part of the universe. Your body, your atoms, your consciousness, all of that is a manifestation of the universe. And so the aspiration for humanity is somewhat limitless, I believe, in what we can do. In the short term, I think we have so many challenges as we're maturing as a species that we need to overcome. So many existential risks. And as we increase our knowledge and our abilities, of course, with that comes these greater and greater possibilities of self-destruction or annihilation or setbacks to us. I really hope that doesn't happen. I think it would be a tragedy if we are the one instantiation of the universe knowing itself and we just tear ourselves apart before we really learn to play the game. Because it feels like there's a lot of stuff we could do if we just figured out how to get on with ourselves, right? I think probably the greatest challenge we have as a species is not a technological one. It's not a one of science. It's one of how do we learn to disagree with each other? How do we learn to really be compassionate and kind to one another and build a society that is inclusive and able to listen to different voices without reaction, that negative kick that it feels like so many of the social media things we use these days just really reward that type of behavior. So it's a critical point we're at right now. And I think the criticality is truly in our behavior and a question of, can you mature? It's like a challenge for us. Can you mature as a species to a point where you can get past this point of just infighting and realizing you are something much bigger than this pathetic thing of just tearing off each other's hair and ripping things up for the sake of it. You can actually be so much more. And there's just this potential that inspires me. And I'm always optimistic. We have challenges, but we should take those challenges seriously.